boardroom fell silent as Kaylara Voidhart's crimson eyes swept across the trembling executives. Her pale fingers drummed against the obsidian conference table, each tap echoing like a death knell through the sterile chamber aboard the corporate flagship Dominion's Edge. The holographic displays showed the quarterly reports, another record-breaking profit margin built on the suffering of frontier colonies. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying the cold precision of a neutron blade, "your concerns about the welfare of our mining operations are noted and dismissed. The Chimeran ore extraction on Gehenna Prime will continue at current rates." Board. Member Vex Ironhold cleared his throat nervously. "Madam Voidhart, the colonists are reporting respiratory failures from the toxic emissions. Perhaps we could..." "Could what?" Kaylara's gaze fixed on him like a targeting laser. "Install atmospheric processors that would cost us 12% of our quarterly profit?" The colonists signed their contracts knowing the risks. If they're too weak to adapt, natural selection will handle the problem. The room's artificial gravity seemed to intensify under her presence. Kaylara Voidhart wasn't just the CEO of Apex Industrial Dynamics. She was a force of nature that had clawed her way from the slums of Kepler Station to controlling 17 star systems. At 28, she commanded a corporate empire that made galactic governments nervous. Her neural implants chimed softly. Another settlement had filed a class-action lawsuit over contaminated water supplies. She dismissed it with a thought, routing it to her legal division's automated response system. Such inconveniences were background noise in her symphony of acquisition and expansion. "The meeting is adjourned," she announced, rising from her chair. Her midnight black corporate suit, adorned with platinum threading, caught the light as she moved with predatory grace. "I expect the Xerian mining complex operational reports on my desk within the hour." As the executives filed out, Kaylara gazed through the viewport at the asteroid field her ships were systematically harvesting. Each floating rock represented millions of credits, and she felt nothing watching entire ecosystems get processed into raw materials. Emotion was weakness. Compassion was bankruptcy. She had learned these truths the hard way when her parents died in the corporate wars, leaving her orphaned and abandoned on a backwater station. Her personal assistant, an android, designated Unit 47, approached with measured steps. "Madam Voidhart, there's an urgent transmission from Colony Station Meridian. They're requesting immediate medical supplies." Requesting or demanding? Kaylara's tone carried dangerous amusement. "The transmission appears desperate, ma'am. They've experienced an outbreak of Vorthak fever. Without treatment, their population will be reduced by 60% within 2 weeks." Kaylara considered this information with the same emotional investment she'd show reviewing shipping manifests. Meridian Station was one of her smaller holdings, barely profitable, mainly valuable for its strategic location near the Helios trade route. "What's their current output?" 17% below projected yields, ma'am. Then they're expendable." She turned away from the viewport. "Deny the request. If the colony fails, we'll replace it with automated mining platforms. More efficient, less maintenance." Unit 47's optical sensors flickered, a programming quirk that almost resembled concern. "Understood, ma'am." But as Kaylara walked toward her private quarters, she couldn't shake an unfamiliar sensation in her chest. For just a moment, thinking about those dying colonists had triggered something she thought she'd successfully purged from her system years ago, something that felt dangerously like guilt. The cargo freighter Starbound Hope shuddered as it dropped. Out of hyperspace, its worn hull scarred from years of running supplies to forgotten colonies. Captain Nick Stellarwind gripped the pilot's controls, her weathered hands steady despite the ship's violent decompression alarms screaming through the bridge. "Zara, I need those engine repairs now," she shouted over the chaos, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent 15 years keeping broken ships flying through hostile space. Her engineer, Zara Quicksilver, called back from the engine compartment. "The hyperdrive coils are fried. We're running on backup power and that won't last another hour." Nix's emerald eyes scanned the tactical display. They were in corporate space, specifically Apex Industrial Dynamics territory. The very mention of that company made her jaw clench. AID had destroyed 3 colonies in the Outer Rim through their efficiency optimization programs, leaving thousands of refugees scattered across the galaxy, including her own younger brother, who had died in the Calvary Station disaster. "Captain," called her communications officer, Ren Darkmoon, "I'm picking up a massive signature on sensors. It's the Dominion's Edge, Kalara Voidheart's flagship." The name hit Nyx like a meteor strike. Every spacer in the outer colonies knew. That name whispered it like a curse. The Ice Queen of the corporate sector. The woman who had turned profit margins into a religion and human suffering into quarterly reports. "Ma'am, they're hailing us," Ren reported, his voice tight with apprehension. Nyx straightened her shoulders. She wore her captain's jacket like armor, patched and repatched but still bearing the insignia of the Independent Merchant Alliance. Whatever happened next, she'd meet it standing. Put them through. The main screen flickered to life, revealing Kalara Voidheart's pale aristocratic features. Her red eyes seemed to look right through Nyx, cataloging and dismissing her in the same instant. The CEO sat in what appeared to be a private office, all dark metals and cold lighting. "Vessel, Starbound Hope," Kalara's voice carried absolute authority. "You are in violation of Apex industrial shipping lanes. State your business or prepare to be boarded." Nyx felt her crew's tension like a physical weight. Zara had stopped working on the engines. Ren's hand hovered over the distress beacon. Even their medical officer, Dr. Thane Moonwhisper, had appeared, on the bridge, his usually calm demeanor showing cracks of worry. "This is Captain Nick Stellarwind of the Independent Merchant Alliance," she replied, keeping her voice level. "We're on a mercy mission to Colony Station Meridian. They're experiencing a medical emergency." Something flickered across Kalara's expression, too quick to interpret, but Nyx caught it. The CEO's fingers drummed against her desk in what might have been irritation. "Meridian Station is an Apex industrial holding," Kalara said coldly. "Their medical needs are our corporate responsibility." "With respect, ma'am, they requested help 3 days ago. No AID vessels have responded." The silence stretched between them like a blade. Nyx could see Kalara's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. Behind the CEO's ice-cold facade, something was stirring. Some conflict between her corporate programming and something deeper. "Your vessel appears to be experiencing mechanical difficulties," Kalara observed, her tone carefully neutral. "We can handle our own problems. Your engine signatures suggest otherwise. You have perhaps 30 minutes before total power failure." It wasn't a question. The woman had sensors that could dissect Nyx's ship down to the molecular level, but there was something in her voice. Not quite concern, but not complete indifference either. "We'll manage," Nyx insisted, though they both knew it was bravado. Kalara leaned forward slightly, her crimson eyes studying Nyx with new intensity. "You would risk your crew's lives for strangers on a dying colony? Those strangers are people. They have families, dreams, hopes. That used to mean something." The words hung in the space between their ships like an accusation. For a heartbeat, Kalara's mask slipped entirely and Nyx saw something unexpected in those red eyes. A flash of recognition, maybe even pain. But the moment passed, and the corporate Ice Queen returned. "Stand by, Captain Stellarwind." The transmission cut, leaving Nyx staring at her own reflection in the darkened screen. Kalara sat in her private office, staring at the blank screen where Captain Stellarwind's face had been moments before. Her hands trembled slightly, a weakness she immediately suppressed, clenching her fists until her knuckles went white. Those strangers are people. They have families, dreams, hopes. That used to mean something. The words echoed in her mind like an accusation from her buried past. She activated her personal workstation, pulling up Captain Stellarwind's file with the efficiency of someone used to reducing human lives to data points. Nyx Stellarwind, age 32, former aid mining supervisor turned independent merchant captain. Parents deceased, killed in a resource acquisition conflict when aid absorbed their small asteroid mining claim. Brother deceased, casualty of the Calvary Station. Atmospheric processor failure. Kalara's breathing hitched. She remembered Calvary Station. The cost-benefit analysis had been simple. Repair the failing life support systems, or write off the colony as a total loss. The repair costs would have eaten into quarterly profits by 8%. She had chosen profits. Her neural implants chimed with an incoming priority message from Unit 47. Colony Station Meridian was reporting 17 new deaths from Vorthak fever. Their population was now below the threshold for viable colony status according to AID regulations. Standard protocol demanded immediate evacuation of remaining assets and conversion to automated resource extraction. Clean, efficient, profitable. But something was wrong with her programming. Kaylara stood abruptly, pacing to the viewport that overlooked her corporate fleet. 12 dreadnoughts, 43 destroyers, and over 100 support vessels, all flying the Apex industrial colors. Each ship represented power, control, security. Everything she had built from nothing after watching her parents die. Her childhood memories surfaced unbidden, hiding in a cargo container, while corporate security forces liquidated the resistance on Kepler Station. Watching her mother bleed out from a neural disruptor blast while corporate executives discussed profit margins over her body. Learning that compassion was a luxury the universe couldn't afford. She had sworn never to be vulnerable again. Never to care about anything that couldn't be quantified in credits and quarterly reports. A proximity alarm sounded. The Starbound Hope's engines had failed completely. The small freighter was now drifting powerless in aid space, completely at her mercy. Kaylara could order her fleet to simply leave them. Space would claim the Starbound Hope and its crew within hours. No direct corporate responsibility, no messy, legal complications. Captain Stellarwind would become another casualty of the frontier's unforgiving nature. But she found herself opening a channel to her fleet commander instead. Admiral Korath, prepare a rescue shuttle. Transfer the crew of the Starbound Hope to our medical bay. There was a pause. Ma'am, the vessel appears to be carrying medical supplies intended for Meridian Station. Standard protocol suggests... I didn't ask for protocol recommendations, Admiral. I gave you an order. Understood, ma'am. Should we confiscate their cargo? Kaylara hesitated. The medical supplies were worth perhaps 50,000 credits, pocket change in her empire's budget. But Meridian Station needed those supplies to survive, and survival meant continued resource production. No, that was corporate thinking. Cold calculation. Those strangers are people. Negative, she heard herself say. Escort them to Meridian, station under aid protection. Ensure safe delivery of their cargo. The silence on the channel stretched uncomfortably long. Ma'am, are you experiencing technical difficulties with your neural implants? This directive contradicts standard. My implants are functioning perfectly, Admiral. Are yours? Yes, ma'am. Orders acknowledged. Kaylara cut the channel and slumped back in her chair. What was happening to her? For 20 years she had operated with perfect corporate efficiency, every decision calculated for maximum profit, minimum liability, optimal resource allocation. But looking at Captain Stellarwind, seeing the determination in those green eyes, the willingness to die for people she'd never met, had triggered something Kaylara thought she'd successfully excised from her personality matrix, conscience. Her personal communicator buzzed. Unit 47's synthetic voice carried its usual measured tone. Madam Voidheart, Captain Stellarwind has requested permission to speak with you directly. She wishes to thank you for the rescue. Kaylara almost declined. Gratitude was another form of emotional manipulation, and she had built her empire by remaining immune to such weaknesses. But she found herself accepting the call anyway. Put her through. The medical bay aboard the Dominion's Edge was a marvel of corporate efficiency, gleaming chrome surfaces, advanced diagnostic equipment, and a sterile atmosphere that spoke of military precision. Nick sat on an examination table while Dr. Thane Moonwhisper received treatment for radiation exposure in the adjacent bay. She wasn't sure what surprised her more, that Kaylara Voidheart had rescued them, or that the infamous CEO had personally come to check on their condition. Your engineer will make a full recovery, Kaylara said, reviewing the medical charts on a holographic display. The radiation exposure was minimal. Your ship's shielding performed better than expected. Nick studied the woman who had become a legend of corporate ruthlessness. Up close, without the intimidating backdrop of her boardroom, Kaylara seemed smaller somehow. Still formidable, but there were subtle cracks in her armor, a tightness around her eyes, a hesitation in her movements. "Thank you," Nick said simply. "I know this isn't standard AD policy." Kaylara's fingers traced the edge of the medical chart, a nervous gesture that seemed oddly human. Policy exists to serve efficiency, not the other way around. "Is that what you tell yourself?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Kaylara's red eyes snapped up to meet Nix's green ones, and for a moment, the corporate mask slipped entirely. "What do you mean?" "I've seen your company's quarterly reports, Ms. Voidhart. I've also seen the casualty statistics from your mining operations. The correlation is pretty clear." Kaylara's expression hardened, but she didn't walk away. Instead, she moved closer, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "You think I don't know what my decisions cost? You think I sleep peacefully in my corporate suite, counting profits while people die?" The raw pain in her voice caught Nix off guard. This wasn't the Ice Queen of corporate legend. This was someone carrying a weight that threatened to crush her. "Then why?" Nix asked gently. "Why continue?" Kaylara was silent for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the viewport showing the star field beyond. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of decades. "Because the alternative is chaos. The galaxy is full of predators, Captain Stellarwind. Corporate states, pirate cartels, rogue AI networks, all of them ready to consume anything weak enough to fall. I built AID to be strong enough to survive in that environment. At what cost? Any cost necessary." But even as she said it, Kaylara's voice lacked conviction. Nix could see the conflict playing out behind those red eyes, duty warring with conscience, corporate conditioning battling against buried humanity. "My brother died on Calvary Station," Nix said quietly. Kaylara flinched as if struck. "I remember Calvary Station. He was an atmospheric engineer, 23 years old. He sent me a message 3 days before the life support failed, telling me about this girl he'd met. Said he was thinking about proposing. Captain Stellarwind. Her name was Lyra. She died too, along with 2,000 others." The silence stretched between them like a gulf. Kaylara's hands were shaking now, her corporate composure crumbling piece by piece. "I made that decision," she whispered. "The cost-benefit analysis showed what? That their lives were worth less than your profit margin?" Kaylara's head snapped up, anger flashing in her eyes. "You don't understand the pressures I face. Every decision affects millions of people across 17 star systems. If AID shows weakness, our competitors will tear us apart, and then everyone under our protection suffers." "Protection?" Nick stood up, meeting Kaylara's glare with her own fierce determination. "You call poisoning water supplies protection? You call forcing families into indentured servitude protection? I call it survival in a universe that doesn't care about individual suffering. But you do care." The words came out softer than Nick's intended. "That's why you're falling apart right now. That's why you rescued us instead of leaving us to die." Kaylara's breath caught. For a moment, she looked younger, vulnerable in a way that spoke of dreams long buried under corporate necessity. "Caring is a weakness I can't afford," she said, but the words sounded hollow. "Maybe," Nix replied. "It's the only strength that matters." They stood facing each other in the sterile medical bay, two women from opposite sides of a galactic divide, corporate queen and independent merchant, predator and prey. But in that moment, something shifted between them, a recognition of shared humanity beneath their different choices. Kaylara turned away first, but her voice was different when she spoke again, quieter, more uncertain. "Your medical supplies will reach Meridian Station. You have my word." "And after that?" Kaylara paused in the doorway, her shoulders tense with internal struggle. "After that, I don't know." The Colony Medical Center on Meridian Station looked more like a battlefield, triage unit than a hospital. Nix walked between rows of makeshift beds, watching Dr. Moonwhisper and the local medical staff work frantically, to distribute the antiviral treatments they'd brought. Children cried in their parents' arms while elderly colonists fought for each labored breath. The air recycling systems wheezed with the strain of processing contaminated atmosphere, another cost optimization from AID's environmental division. What surprised Nix most was the figure standing in the corner, observing everything. With haunted red eyes, Kaylara Voidheart had insisted on personally overseeing the medical supply distribution. She wore a simple environmental suit instead of her corporate regalia, and without the intimidating backdrop of her flagship, she looked almost fragile. A small girl, no more than 7 years old, approached Kaylara with the fearless curiosity of childhood. Her dark hair was matted with fever sweat, but her eyes held bright intelligence. "Are you the medicine lady?" she asked in the direct way children had of cutting through pretense. Kaylara knelt down, bringing herself to the girl's eye level. Yes, I suppose I am. Mommy says you're very important. Are you here to make everyone better?" The simple question hit Kaylara like a plasma bolt. She glanced around the medical center, at the suffering she had indirectly caused through decades of profit-driven decisions. "I'm trying to," she said quietly. The girl smiled and wrapped her small arms around Kaylara's neck in an impulsive hug. For a moment, the corporate CEO sat frozen, overwhelmed by the trust and innocence of the gesture. Then, almost involuntarily, her arms came up to return the embrace. Nix watched from across the room as something fundamental shifted in Kaylara's expression. The Ice Queen facade cracked completely, replaced by raw, unguarded emotion. When the girl's mother came to collect her, Kaylara remained kneeling on the floor, staring at her hands as if seeing them for the first time. "Ma'am?" Unit 47 approached, with careful steps. "You have 17 priority communications waiting, including an urgent board meeting regarding the Zirion mining complex expansion. Cancel them," Kaylara said without looking up. "Ma'am, the board meeting concerns a time-sensitive acquisition that could increase quarterly profits by," I said cancel them. Her voice carried a new quality, not the cold authority of corporate command, but something deeper and more personal. Nix approached slowly, recognizing the signs of someone having their worldview fundamentally shaken. She'd experienced it herself, when her parents died. That moment when everything you thought you knew about the universe suddenly made no sense. "First time seeing the real cost?" she asked gently. Kaylara looked up, her red eyes bright with unshed tears. "I've reviewed casualty reports for 20 years. Numbers on screen, statistical projections, acceptable loss parameters. But they were never real. They were always real. You just couldn't let yourself see it." "How do you live with this?" Kaylara's voice was barely a whisper. "How do you see suffering and not become paralyzed by it?" Nix sat down beside her on the medical center floor, two women finding common ground in the middle of a humanitarian crisis. You help where you can. You make the next choice better than the last one. You remember that every number in your reports represents someone's universe. Kaylara was quiet for a long time, watching Dr. Moonwhisper treat a teenage boy whose parents hadn't survived the fever. The boy was alone now, an orphan in a galaxy that didn't care about individual tragedy. "I was an orphan once," Kaylara said suddenly. "Kepler Station. My parents ran a small mining cooperative that wouldn't sell to the corporate cartels, so they were eliminated as a business obstacle. I'm sorry. I swore I'd never be that vulnerable again. Never let emotion cloud my judgment. Never care about anything that couldn't be quantified and controlled." She laughed bitterly. "I became everything I hated to avoid becoming a victim." "And now?" Kaylara stood slowly, her movements those of someone carrying a new and terrible weight. When she spoke, her voice held the quiet determination of someone who had found their true purpose. "Now I have work to do." She activated her personal communicator, connecting directly to Admiral Korath aboard the Dominion's Edge. "Admiral, I want full medical and engineering teams deployed to Meridian Station immediately. Repair their life support systems, upgrade their medical facilities, and establish a permanent aid medical station in this sector. Ma'am, the cost projections for such an operation would significantly impact." Admiral, are your hearing receptors functioning properly? Yes, ma'am. Then you heard my orders. Execute them immediately. Nix felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not just for Meridian Station, but for the possibility that even the most hardened hearts could find their way back to humanity. This won't be easy, she warned. Your board, your shareholders, your entire corporate structure is built around the decisions you're questioning now. Kelara turned to face her, and Nix saw something new in those red eyes, a fierce determination that had nothing to do with profit margins or quarterly reports. Then I'll tear it all down and build something better. 6 months later, the boardroom aboard the Dominion's Edge felt like a tribunal preparing for execution. Kelara faced 12 of the most powerful corporate executives in the galaxy, their expressions ranging from concerned to openly hostile. Board member Vex Ironhold slammed his datapad on the obsidian table. Profits are down 37%. Stock prices have collapsed. 3 major shareholders have pulled out completely. The medical aid programs alone have cost us over 2 billion credits, added Chief Financial Officer Rava Goldstream, her voice sharp with accusation. The environmental restoration projects on our mining worlds have essentially eliminated our competitive advantage. Kelara sat at the head of the table, no longer wearing the midnight black corporate suits that had been her armor. Instead, she wore simple gray clothing that made her look more like a colony administrator than a corporate overlord. Our competitive advantage was built on suffering, she replied calmly. Perhaps it's time we found a better foundation. The room erupted in angry voices. Board members stood, pointing accusatory fingers, threatening lawsuits and corporate coups. Through it all, Kelara remained seated, her red eyes reflecting a peace that had eluded her for decades. Ma'am, Unit 47 whispered from beside her chair. Security reports indicate that 43% of our fleet commanders are prepared to support a board-initiated leadership change. And the other 57%? They remain loyal. To you personally, ma'am, though they express confusion about your recent policy changes. The confusion was understandable. In 6 months, Kelara had fundamentally restructured Apex Industrial Dynamics from a pure extraction corporation into something unprecedented, a humanitarian industrial complex. Mining operations now included mandatory environmental restoration. Worker safety protocols had been upgraded to exceed galactic standards. Medical stations had been established in every AID territory. Most shocking of all, she had instituted profit-sharing programs that gave colony workers a stake in their own productivity. Enough! Chairman Voss Steelborn's voice cut through the chaos. The ancient corporate patriarch rarely spoke, but when he did, even other board members fell silent. Kelara, what you've done isn't just fiscally irresponsible, it's evolutionarily unsound. Compassion is a luxury civilization can't afford. We are apex predators in a hostile galaxy. Act like prey, and we become prey. Kelara stood slowly, her movement drawing every eye in the room. When she spoke, her voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had found their true power. Mr. Steelborn, with respect, you're thinking too small. Too small? You see the galaxy as a zero-sum game where strength requires the exploitation of weakness, but you're missing the bigger picture. She activated the room's holographic display, showing star charts of aid territory. Every colony we've helped has increased productivity by an average of 40%. Worker loyalty is up 300%. Voluntary colonization requests have increased by 500%. The numbers hung in the air like an accusation against decades of corporate orthodoxy. More importantly, Kelara continued, we've eliminated the resource drain of constant security enforcement, rebellion suppression, and refugee crisis management. Compassionate governance isn't just morally superior, it's more efficient. Board member Nara Voidfist shook her head in disgust. You sound like some naive idealist, not a corporate CEO. The universe respects only strength. You're right, Kelara. Agreed. The universe does respect strength, but you've confused cruelty with strength, exploitation with power. True strength is building something that doesn't require constant fear to maintain. The boardroom doors opened, and Captain Nix Stellarwind entered with a small delegation. She now wore the uniform of AID's new Humanitarian Fleet Command, a position Kaylara had created specifically for her. Captain Stellarwind, Chairman Steelborn's voice dripped with disdain. I assume you're here to witness the removal of your patron? Nick smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. Actually, I'm here to deliver a message from the Outer Rim, Colonial Alliance, the Independent Merchant Consortium, and the Free Worlds Federation. She activated her own holographic display, showing trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and resource-sharing treaties. Every major independent faction in 3 sectors has agreed to exclusive trade partnerships with the new AID. They're willing to pay premium rates for goods produced under ethical labor standards. Her smile widened. Compassion, as it turns out, is incredibly profitable when you do it right. The silence in the boardroom was deafening. For the first time in their careers, these corporate predators found themselves outmaneuvered by an economics they didn't understand. The vote of no confidence is tabled indefinitely, Kaylara announced. This board will either adapt to our new operational parameters or be replaced by people who can. As the stunned executives filed out, Nix approached Kaylara's chair. You know this is just the beginning, she said quietly. There are still corporations out there that operate under the old rules. They'll see your changes as weakness to exploit. Kaylara turned to face her, and Nix was struck by how much the woman had changed. The Ice Queen was gone, replaced by someone who had found strength in vulnerability, power in compassion. Let them come, Kaylara said. We'll show them what real strength looks like. Through the viewport, both women could see the aid fleet in new formation, not the predatory hunting pack it had once been, but something unprecedented in galactic history. A military force dedicated to protection rather than conquest. In the distance, Colony Station Meridian gleamed with new construction, medical facilities, schools, environmental processors, and residential complexes where families could build lives instead of merely surviving. Kaylara had found her redemption not in love for one person, but in love for all the people her power could protect. The heartless CEO was gone, replaced by something the galaxy had never seen before. A corporate leader who measured success in lives saved rather than profits extracted. The transformation was complete, and the universe would never be the same.